Hello, everybody. This is your flashback. Once again today, not a typical review like I've been doing, more of kind of a vlog-ish review. Yesterday I did my video on, kind of what I'd like to see in a fairy tale film and kind of my thoughts on making fairy tales into movies. Because I was planning on going to see Snow and the Huntsman today, which I did, and I really liked the movie. It seemed like the movie was a really good movie. It looked really good, but it seemed like the movie wanted to be like a bunch of other different movies and still be Snow White, and it kind of didn't. It didn't all like mesh well together. Uh, I really kind of liked this take on Snow White. It was a very kind of the Snow White character was very proactive in this version of the story, as opposed to like most of the ones that we hear and everything. With, she's not doing much of anything. Uh, but it was good. There were a few parts in where I was like, oh god, really? Did they just do that? Like, uh, oh, like there was this part near, like they do the whole apple thing or whatever, and uh, the kiss that wakes her up. When I saw it, I was like, "You have got to be kidding me!" Like, I'm gonna try my best, like, not to really like spoil a whole lot about the movie in this little vlog review thing, or whatever. But I'll just kind of, go over my thoughts on it and everything. The acting was really good. Uh, I don't know a lot of actress names, whatever, or anything. The only one I actually did know from the movie was Kirsten Stewart, who played Snow White. And when I first saw that Kirsten Stewart was going to be Snow White, I was thinking, oh god. So what was the rationale behind this decision? Why are you going to have Kirsten Stewart, Bella Swan, play our lovely Princess Snow White? I mean, it wasn't a horrible choice, but they definitely could have chosen someone else much better to do the role. Uh, like when I was watching the movie, every time that she opened her mouth, Kirsten Stewart has like these kind of like buck biggish teeth or whatever. I mean, they're not huge, but every time she opened her mouth, I was like drawn to her teeth. I'm like, I cannot stop staring at her teeth. Like just her front teeth. I mean, I know mine are buck and big, but hers on the big screen, I was just like, I cannot take my eyes away from your teeth, Kirsten Stewart. I just can't. Uh, but she did better than I thought she would do. I mean, she still kind of has that like Kirsten Stewart face on her uh, throughout like most of her scenes and everything. But she managed to do and she managed to do a good job. The guy that played Thor is the Huntsman. I don't know what his name is, and I liked him as the Huntsman. I didn't really have too much of a problem with his role, except for there was like one part, the later part of the movie that I'm not going to go into, but that's that. Uh, there is this one guy who plays like the prince or the duke's son, which is kind of, I guess, supposed to be like Snow White's love interest or something like that. And he manages to do pretty good. Like he seemed like that kind of like typical Disney prince from like the older Disney movies like Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty, where like you're spending a lot of time with the princess for most movies, and then when he comes in, he kind of like Trey tries to really kind of be that kind of like Prince Charming kind of like, I'm going to do everything. I want you to stay here by my side, and I will do it all for you. I will give you my everything, kind of thing, whatever like that. Although there's kind of a twist to that part. With, yeah, he starts saying that stuff, but he's very devoted to Snow White. Like as soon as he gets word that Snow White is alive, because everyone thought that she was dead, uh, uh, well, the scene that when that happened or whatever, I was instantly thinking of kind of that part from the Disney version of Sleeping Beauty, where Prince Philip comes back and is like, "I found the girl I'm going to marry," and his dad's like, "Oh, what? No, you're engaged." He's like, "I don't care. I'm going to find this woman," and he runs off. And what this guy did said, he's like, "I already lost her once, I'm not going to lose her again," kind of thing. I was thinking, exactly right. And so he rides off into the dark woods. But I'll touch on that later. The dwarves, I didn't really like the dwarves in this movie. Like there was one dwarf, and this is like the one part I'm going to actually like spoil. But there was this one dwarf, and my entire thoughts when I saw him was I'm like, he is this movie's Dopey from the Disney version of Snow White. He's not like mute or anything, but he has that kind of like character kind of ish about him where I'm like, yeah, this is Dopey if I ever saw him in like a more serious, beefed up version of the story. I mean, it wasn't a horrible performance by the dwarves, but there was this one older dwarf that was kind of there to like point out the obvious, like to just be Captain Obvious. And I'm like, that doesn't fit very well. Uh, I believe actually there were eight dwarves, and the dopey dwarf or whatever, he ends up getting killed. So I'm like, oh okay, so now we do have some other subjects. That's when my friend Lizzie and I leaned over. I'm like, how many dwarves are there? So much like seven. I'm like, we only have six now. It's like, no, there were eight. Now there are seven. And so I like spent like a minute like in the scenes that kind of followed that. Let me count them like, and I okay, they do have seven dwarves now. Excuse me, sorry to say a bunch. You know, kind of a bit of stuff with nose and everything. Not have a cold, but besides that, that's just the point. There's not much else to say about like the side characters, whatever. Since they did very well for their parts, but the one character that was the best, and I do mean the absolute best throughout the entire film from start to finish, was the Queen. And I don't know what the actress's name is, but she was excellent. She was exceptional. Like I found myself near the end of the film, like rooting for the Queen to win. And I was like, oh my god, I want this character to succeed in her kind of efforts to kill Snow White. Uh, uh, she was a very simple like she was. I don't want to say that she was crazy, but she did have that very much Snow White Queen. I am the fairest of them all, and I'm going to keep myself that way kind of mentality about her. And the way that she goes about doing it in this version is that instead of her being young or like a young queen or whatever, and just trying to kill Snow White, it's what she does is she's able to use magic, and her magic and her power is sustained by her youth. So what she has to do is she has to continually drain the youth of other women, and that's what she does to sustain herself. Because like there are parts of the movie where I think like two or three times where she seems to be aging. Like she seems to be aging. Like it's very like the one time I really noticed it was very. It's near the start ish of the film, kind of like after she's already taken power. Sorry, my nose is really bothering me. But she's there's this like right after she kind of took power and everything, and her face it's like very slowly, and I do mean very slowly, very kind of subtly, uh, aging, and there are like all those spots and lines are starting to show and everything, and I'm like, wow, this there was like a lot of effort, a lot of passion, a lot of love went into this film, and I really enjoyed it. But and she was definitely the best out of everyone. I mean, everyone was super passionate about their roles. I guess Kirsten Joe was passionate in her own way about her role, because like there are parts where she was like really supposed to be passionate and like have that like leaderish sense about her. But I'm like, I don't really see Kirsten Stewart as this kind of like. And I'm going to get to, like my main dislike of Kirsten Stewart in this role, and my main dislike with this movie later and like later part of the video. But at the moment, I'm focusing on like what I really liked about the movie. So The acting was definitely excellent. It was amazing from pretty much the entire cast. The film looked beautiful. It was just gorgeous. Although that again spills a bit into my dislike with the film, in that there are parts of the film, like in later, like in the, I want to call it like the second half of the film or whatever, like when Snow White meets the dwarves. I was watching the movie and I'm like, I I just I just stepped into a completely different movie. And there were parts of like a lot of the movie, like for the most of the first part of the movie, I did not feel like I was in the movie theater. Like what I do when I'm at movies, if I'm like with a friend of mine or whatever, and they know I'm going to this, I kind of talk to them, kind of like make little jokes or whatever about stuff that's happening in the movie. And it was a little bit after she ran into the forest and everything. It was like a bit before then. It was like when she actually started to like Snow White actually escaped from the castle. Into the dark forest, but I actually stopped talking, and I did not feel like I was in the movie theater anymore. Except when like my friend would talk to me, or when I'd like, or you know, when scenes would go from one kind of movie to a different kind of movie. Uh, but overall, it was a very enjoyable experience. I really enjoyed the way the film looked. Everyone just looked great for their roles. Like Kirsten's like my main thing is that when I think of Snow White, I do not think of for an actress of Snow White. I do not think of Kirsten Stewart as Snow White. It may be because I'm a fan of this particular person though, but that I picture more someone like Selena Gomez as Snow White, because she is very attractive. She has that kind of figure about her, that look about her, that I'm like, I see you as so much more of a Snow White than I see someone like Kirsten Stewart. Uh, Kirsten Selena Gomez is absolutely beautiful. I mean, Kirsten Stewart isn't ugly by any stretch of the word. She's not. I wouldn't even call her plain or just pretty. Kirsten Stewart is a very beautiful actress, but not the kind of like super beautiful that I guess I would think of when I imagine like a princess kind of thing, you know? And maybe it's because Selena Gomez also works at Disney that I kind of have that idea, but that's just me. The film looked great. The special effects were incredible. Like, especially once again when it came to the Queen, her magic was just phenomenal. I enjoyed every single minute of it when she was like doing some kind of magic or whatever. And there was one part though with it was the apple, and I like the apple after Snow White eats the apple. Like, the trailers did something weird where they showed like turning like this white liquid thing or whatever. In the movie, it turns like this brown fuzzball. I'm like, um, okay, why? But that was like the only part of like the match that I was like, um, huh? But everything else, like it just looked great. Another thing I really liked was just, like I said, how much passion and love seems to have gone to this film. Like this seems like someone wanted to tell an epic Snow White story, and I think that's kind of a hard thing to do. Like I remember, I just seem to remember. I didn't actually see it, but I remember that movie that came out a few years ago. It was Red Riding Hood, and that had the same kind of look to it that Snow White and the Huntsman has to it. It was where it was like, it takes, excuse me, it takes this fairy tale and kind of like drowns it in this like very dark, uh, not horror-ish aspect, because the Snow White version, it wasn't like a horror movie, whereas uh, Red Riding Hood kind of looked a bit more kind of like a horror movie, or like a horror take of Red Riding Hood, a little Red Riding Hood. But the films did look very kind of similar to each other, and I really kind of liked the visual style that kind of went into it, and like the love and passion that really went into this whole project. Uh, so uh, everything. It just really it looked great. And now I kind of get into the negatives of the film. My biggest, really kind of negative, my biggest problem with this movie is Snow White herself. And I know in these kinds of stories, it's like, the beautiful princess who was like one with nature and like this perfect, perfect person. But you can't. I think that's one of my biggest problems, I guess, with the idea of fairy tale films is that in the original stories, these characters they weren't really characters. They were just kind of like character archetype kind of things, or they were just kind of like tropes or kind of like ideas of or like aspects of a character, like one singular aspect of a character, kind of, and that was really just kind of it, and they didn't really go anywhere with that, and they didn't develop them as people or characters. The Snow White in the Disney movie, while it shouldn't have too much character at all to begin with, anyways, there was something about her where when you're watching it, you feel generally. I'm kind of like like overall most times watch somewhat Seven Dwarfs, the Disney version. You feel for Snow White. You feel for her. You're scared for her, and you're happy for her at times when she's happy. You're scared for her at times when she's scared, and things like that. It helps because you're supposed to create that kind of bond with the character. But I would have liked to feel she developed more as a character, but that's a different thing. This version of Snow White, on the other hand, though, is the whole. I guess the whole thing is that they said in the movie that Snow White is life. She is everything that is life, or whatever, or that is light. She is like the light in the darkness. She brings life to everything that she touches, while the queen, I guess, is supposed to bring like death and darkness and destruction. Uh, and uh, Snow White in this film, to me, felt very much like a Mary Sue. Like this Snow White could really do no wrong. There was absolutely nothing that she did that really kind of uh, led to her downfall at all throughout the entire movie. Uh, Except for like maybe the one scene where she's running around in the dark forest, but that still it's like, you do something and consequences happen. Although, I guess with the Snow White story, there's unless they were going to go with the original Snow White and make her like curious as hell and kind of a bit naive about the ways of the world, which the original Snow White was supposed to be. In the original Snow White, the Queen managed to trick Snow White a grand total of about 3 times, maybe about 3 to 5 times. And granted, though, the Snow White was about like 12, 13, or 14. So that comes off as much easier, but this Snow White is clearly supposed to be like uh, in her older, like her late teens or early 20s, I guess I'll go with however old Stewart is, which I don't know. But, she's still supposed to be, someone that, like, kind of is grown up and kind of knows, I guess, how to somewhat handle it. And kind of, or is kind of, I don't really know. Okay, I'm kind of like grasping at straws here, I don't really know. But she comes off as too perfect. And I guess I don't really mind that too much, depending on how it's pulled off. But the way it's pulled off here, I was like, no. I mean, I found myself rooting kind of for Snow White at certain parts. Like Kirsten Stewart as an actress in this movie, I can support her far more than I can support Bella Swan in Twilight because of the circumstances that she's thrown into this version as opposed to the circumstances that she's thrown into in the Twilight movies. So I can find myself actively supporting the Snow White character. But once we get to like the middle-ish of the film, or like the part when she comes out of like when she there's the part where she's like walking with the prince or whatever, and he tells her you need to like rally the villagers. Like everyone will be fighting, will want to fight in your name, and we will go and be the queen and everything. And she's all like, "How am I supposed to lead people?" And I'm like, you're you have a Huntsman, a person of nobility, and 8 dwarves traveling with you of their own free will, really. And you're wondering how to, call people to lead people because they're all doing this for you, really, and that was just kind of like I'm like, oh my god, is she this stupid? Uh, uh, and I can actually say that about that particular part of the movie as opposed to the Apple scene because why did we draw this movie was like that's Kirsten Stewart. It's gonna be klutzy, clumsy, Snow White. I'm going to see her choke on an apple because that's what happened to Snow White in the fairy tale. It wasn't some magic enchanted apple, really. Or I guess, at least I don't think so. What happened was Snow White bit into the apple and it got lodged in her throat, so she appeared to be dead. But as they were carrying the glass coffin, they bumped it or something, and the chunk of apple flew out of her mouth, and then she woke up or something like that. But every nowadays, it's very much we like to in these fairy tales about that magic and all that stuff to it. So I didn't really mind that. So I'm like, I can't. So like, if I can't find anything to kind of like question her intelligence or stupidity for anything related to like the actual Snow White elements of the story, I can find elements to kind of question her intelligence stupidity at these moments, which I did. Because I'm just like, you have these people following you, and you're asking how to get people to follow you. I'm like, I'm just like, what the fuck are you, stupid? But that was that. Another problem I had was, the kiss that woke Snow White, came. I'm just not even going to go into that one, but I didn't really like it. Uh, what else was the dwarves? I didn't really. I guess because like kind of my idea of doing a fairy tale movie is to keep all of the elements that people think of when they associate with a fairy tale. Like in the case of Snow White, you have the Snow White, you have the evil queen, you have the dwarves. I guess the huntsman, you have the apple, and you have the kiss that wakes the humanity. Uh, so this movie it did have all of that. It had all of that. Uh, but uh, I guess like what I said in like my last video, I think was that I want all these elements there. I want them all to be developed. I want someone to take these elements and really go somewhere with them, especially in Snow White the Dwarf, because in all variants of the fairy tale, it is the dwarves really that are like the backbone of the story. The dwarves are the ones that give Snow White shelter when she escapes from the Queen. Even in the Disney version, they're in effectively kind of the death of the Queen. Uh, really, Carmen was a bitch in that movie, so they effectively kind of kill the Queen, and they're the ones that set up that are so touched by Snow White herself that when she appears to be dead, they cannot bring themselves to bury her at all. So they build her, they encase her in a coffin made of glass or something similar to that. And so the dwarves were not at all developed at all, really. They were just kind of like tacked on there because it's Snow White, we have to have dwarves, so here are your dwarves. And so I didn't really like that. Another thing I didn't really like was that the film didn't really seem. It didn't like the film flowed. There was a definite like flow to it, but there were parts of it where there was a definite disconnect. Uh, like there is this part where after she meets the dwarves, they enter this whole like enchanted like fairy forest kind of thing, and I'm like, what the fuck movie did I just like step into? Like, what the hell? Did they like switch the film reel or something, or what is this, a different movie? And there's a part, and I know everyone like they show this in the trailers, where there is this big deer, this big stag with these gigantic antlers, and I'm like, oh my god, it's the the forest god from Princess Mononoke, and it is. It is pretty much the exact same thing, except it has a actual face that's not creepy to look at. It's like the face of the stag or deer, whatever the hell it was. But this thing is huge, white, and with these gigantic horns, and it gets shot and turns to butterflies. And I'm like, yeah, it's the thing from Princess Mononoke. And in this one scene where they're having this, because like the doors are talking about in the background, they're like, she is the light, she is the one who will save us and deliver us from everything. I'm like, okay, so here's what you've just done. You have just jumped from Snow White to Princess Mononoke to Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, back to Mononoke, and then back to Snow White. We've come like full circle here. So those elements or whatever that were like kind of brought into the film, whatever, it didn't really like seem to click and mesh well. There's like the part after where like the one dwarf dies. Everyone's saying, oh, she brings life and light and everything she touches. I'm like, because when the dwarf dies, he gets shot by an arrow. I'm like, well, why don't you just take the arrow out of him and use your magical light, life-bringing powers to, heal the wound? Because they said when you're near her, your ailments and your injuries will vanish. You feel better. You become better. Like I guess she has this healing power to her. So I'm like, she could have just killed this damn dwarf here, and now he's dead. Are we just doing this for the sake of having only 7 dwarves, or is there something else to this? But so I didn't really like that. Um, what else didn't I like about this movie? I guess you called it a bit of a nitpick, and I think you really can. But the mirror itself, like whenever I saw the mirror in the trailers, I'm like, is that a symbol? Like a drum symbol that they're calling a mirror? No, 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 we can't do that. And then when they brought the mirror in like the movie, I'm like, that is either a giant golden dish of some kind or a symbol. It is not a mirror of any sort. But at the very center of this giant gold thing is a reflective surface that actually it is like a mirror, whatever. And so I'm like, was it too much for them to just get a really really badass looking like mirror, or do they really have to like spring for this whole gold turned like CGI Invisible Man kind of thing? That was one of the things that when the Queen is talking to the mirror. Not a spoiler. When the Queen is talking to the mirror, no one can see the big gold man thing that comes out of the mirror or whatever. They just see her as she's talking to herself. Uh, but let's see. What else can I really say about this movie? There like another part another thing I really didn't like about this movie is that I do have to agree with Yasu Otaku saw in the Huntsman like about a week ago when I watched her kind of blog about it, and I do have to really agree with her when she said that the person doing this film does not understand like the concept of fantasy and why people like fantasy. Uh, because like looking at this like as a writer of fantasy and as a writer of fiction, uh, I I know like what a lot of what people say, I guess, or like what I've heard from say is like when I heard her say it is that people that don't like or don't get fantasy describe it say that people like it because it has these elements in it, like it has magic and fairies and supernatural that shit going on. And personally, that is what I love about fantasy, and because there is like it really is kind of it's a kind of free for all that you're not really that you can't really do much of in any other genre than uh, fantasy. Uh, but I do enjoy what I guess the main draw of fantasy to nerds and everything it's supposed to be, like you said, is that it is a world. It's the world that you become immersed in fantasy, and the world of Snow White and the Huntsman. It seems like Lord of the Rings, Princess Mononoke, and Lost in the Valley of the Wind, like just kind of taking from everything or whatever to kind of create the fantasy world. And the fairies when they first appeared, like they like freaked the shit out of me. I was like, what the fuck just happened here? Like, where the hell did they come from? What? How? Uh, but so I do agree that whoever helmed this project did not understand like the concept of creating like a concrete fantasy world, which I guess in a standalone film like this, where there's not supposed to be like a sequel or a continuation to it or anything, I guess it's not you shouldn't really have to develop the world or anything because personally, when I'm writing, I developed my world around my characters. I don't develop my characters within my world. I start off with my characters, or I start off with my basic plot, my characters, and then as I'm writing my story out, I shape the world and the rules around them to fit them. And my friend Rose like that's the backwards way of doing it, but I guess it can work because overall it generally tends to work for me. It's the best way for me to write. But for a film like this, I guess you don't really need to really kind of develop and really try to immerse your audience in this world because they're going to become immersed in the film anyways for the most part. Like if you really want to see this movie and you're watching it, you're not really going to feel like you're in a movie theater anymore. You're kind of going to feel like you are just kind of observing this take place in some alternate like I don't even know. Well, you're not going to feel like you're really just sitting in a movie theater. Like there's gonna have to be something around you to like remind you in some part, or when the movie disconnects from certain elements that oh yeah, I'm in a movie right now. Like the part where they walk into that like really less reinforced of the fair. I'm like oh shit, I'm in a movie. I'm in a movie theater, aren't I? Yeah, I'm in a movie theater. But so but overall, like the film, it was really I really liked the film. Like I'm not sure if I would call it a great, awesome, epic, truly amazing movie because it was great. It was amazing. It had some epic moments to it. There were some good parts. There were good things about it. There's some negative kind of things about it too. But I call it I call it an enjoyable movie. It is definitely something that you can sit through and enjoy. Another thing I really noticed about this movie is that there's not a lot of stuff that's played for laughs, and I am the kind of person that will laugh at things depending on either what is said or how it's being said. Or I can like find a joke to say about what's being said, kind of, or what it's being said. So I was able to like make jokes or whatever, and like the early parts of the film and everything. But as it went on, like my friend Lizzie was kind of doing the jokes and everything, and I was kind of thinking like, uh, I just kind of want to lose myself in this movie because I really was like throughout like the main scene with like Snow White, like all like from the start of the film all the way up to the point where they meet up with the dwarves. I was like lost in this movie, and I was lost in the good way. Not like I was lost like what's going on, I don't understand anything, but I was lost like this is like an area where I don't want anyone to find me. This is where I want to be right now, just kind of observing and looking at this wonderful thing. Sorry about that. Like that, you might be coming down with something like maybe told something. Uh, but overall, it was it was not a waste of time by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't a waste of money at all. Uh, especially considering I had to pay for both tickets. But I mean, like, if it looked interesting to you, if you're someone that really wants to see the movie, I recommend going to see it. If for someone that doesn't want to go see it, give it a chance. Like, really, kind of like take another look at it and like just look at it because it's just it's an amazing, beautiful thing to look at. Mainly, I really liked like the scenes in the castle and the scenes in the forests. Not the dark forest because that really kind of like freaked the fuck out of me because that is a freaky scene. Uh, but like even the part where I felt like it had gone into a different movie or a different world, kind of, it is still beautiful and gorgeous to look at. Another thing I just remember this that I kind of want to say because I was planning on doing this review since I saw the movie. But I felt like there were kind of like I guess subtle callbacks or whatever to the original Disney version of Snow White or like the different iterations of it, kind of. Uh, but I used I guess the Disney version mainly for my main point comparison, just because it's the most what I'm most familiar with. The part where she goes into the dark forest is a very the that scene is a very distinct callback to that part in the Disney movie where the husband tells her to run and she is running through the forest and she thinks everything is out to get her. And that's kind of like the same mentality that went into this part of the so in the husband movie was that when she enters this dark forest, like she's kind of like flipping out and all this stuff in the forest, it looks like it's trying to kill her. So there was that. Um, what else is there? I mean, I guess that's kind of it. But there were other parts of it I know that I just like I can't remember them at the moment, even though I just saw the movie like a few hours ago. But there are parts of it I know where I'm like, oh, that's like kind of like okay, the dwarf I mentioned that died, like the dopey dwarf, whatever. That was kind of another callback. There was like the old dwarf that's kind of there to like espouse or just blab the obvious or whatever. He was a lot like I guess Doc from the original Snow from the Disney version, where I guess he's somewhat of like the leader of the dwarves or whatever, or like their old wise mentor kind of thing. Uh, but there definitely did seem to be like some callbacks or kind of like inspired by this version, kind of using it in this one or whatever. And overall, it worked really well in the movie's favor. Uh, is there really anything else? I don't know. Like, I guess that I guess now is the time that we're going to start doing all these old fairy tales, making them into movies. I guess that the way that it was done in Snow White and the Huntsman is probably like the best way to do it. Like, I guess if we're going to go by like what happened with the whole Snow White thing, and I guess this Mirror Mirror, I guess that we're going to have like two versions of the fairy tale maybe from now on, where you have like the comedic kind of spoof version of the fairy tale, like it's meant to be comedy kind of family film, and then we're going to have like the dark, serious drama that unfolded here. And I really do like how they really tried to make this Snow White in this movie like be a leader and be a ruler and be someone that you could ask that was like the leading lady in her own story. Uh, I loved the Queen. The Queen was just like the best character, the best thing in the entire film. Like she was the one that she and the Huntsman, and to a lesser degree the Prince, Duke, son, whatever royal guy was. They came off as real characters. Like you could really imagine these kinds of people or whatever. In these kinds of situations. But I really enjoyed that film. I think actually right now I'm going to go try and just watch Red Riding Hood, like find it online or whatever, just so I can kind of compare and contrast like, the style of using that film to like so and see if they are similar, so I can so I'm right when I'm using them as a comparison. Uh, but other than that, I give Snow White and the Huntsman uh, 4 stars out of 5. Actually, I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. A near perfect rating. This has been your Flashback. I'll see you this Friday with another review, or I'll see you sooner than that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.